Have you ever noticed how heavy life can feel, even when nothing is technically wrong? When you wake up, carry out your routines, meet people, talk, smile, do what's expected, and yet something inside you still feels quietly exhausted. Not because of one big thing, but because of 1,000 small things that slowly weigh you down. You tell yourself it's normal, that everyone feels this way, that maybe you just need more rest, more motivation, more distractions to keep you moving. But the truth is simpler and much harder to face. You're carrying things that were never meant to be carried this long. The Stoics taught that most of our suffering does not come from the world, but from the weight we refuse to put down, from the unnecessary attachments, the endless noise, the constant need to prove, explain, fix, and please. Epictetus once said, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." He didn't mean to encourage ignorance, he meant liberation. The kind of freedom that comes when you no longer chase validation from others, when you quietly step away from the unnecessary burdens that drain your mind and steal your clarity. You see, the world constantly tells you to add more goals, more connections, more achievements, more opinions. But wisdom begins when you learn the art of subtraction, the courage to quietly remove what no longer serves your peace. There are things in your life right now that make you restless, habits, people, fears, beliefs. Some entered gently, others crept in unnoticed. But now they live rent, free in your mind, cluttering the space where stillness should exist. And the most dangerous part, you've grown used to them, they've become familiar, even comforting in their own toxicity. You tell yourself, that's just how I am, but it isn't. It's who you became after holding on to things that no longer belong to you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." If you lived by that truth, if you truly remembered how brief your time here is, you would start letting go without noise, without drama, without fear. You would begin to simplify. You would stop explaining yourself to people who never listen. You would stop chasing approval that brings no peace. You would start quietly removing. This is not about isolation. It's about clarity. It's about seeing how much of what you carry is not truly yours, and having the courage to release it in silence. Because growth isn't loud, real change doesn't announce itself. It begins in quiet decisions, small, unseen choices that reshape the entire course of your life. And that's where your journey begins, not in what you add, but in what you remove, not in noise, but in silence, and not in fighting the world, but in freeing yourself from what no longer serves your soul. So as we begin this reflection together, remember, the Stoics were not men who sought perfection. They sought peace, and peace begins with subtraction. The Stoics believed that the greatest burden a person carries is not the weight of the world, it's the unnecessary baggage of their own mind. The opinions, attachments, resentments, and distractions that accumulate quietly, year after year, until the soul can barely breathe beneath them. You begin life empty and light, but slowly, without realizing it, you collect things: the need to be liked, the habit of comparison, the fear of being left behind. You hold on to people who drain your peace because you mistake attachment for loyalty. You keep old versions of yourself alive because you fear change. And in time, the mind becomes crowded, too loud to hear its own wisdom. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you seek tranquility, do less, or more accurately, do what's essential." In that single line lies the Stoic truth. Simplicity is strength. The more you remove, the clearer you see. And when you see clearly, you begin to act from wisdom rather than impulse. Every unnecessary attachment clouds your vision. Every useless argument steals your calm. Every toxic habit blurs the line between who you are and who you're pretending to be. The Stoics were not men who sought to escape the world. They learned to live above it. They understood that the only thing you truly own is your mind. Everything else, your possessions, your image, your reputation, exists outside your control. And what lies beyond your control must never control you. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." But courage, in Stoic philosophy, doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers in the quiet act of letting go, in walking away from what you've outgrown, in refusing to explain yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. Freedom isn't found in getting everything you want. It's found in realizing how little you need, and that's where the Stoic path separates from the modern world. The world tells you to add, to build an identity out of noise, to prove your worth through possessions, to chase meaning through attention. But the Stoic tells you to subtract, to walk through life like a traveler, carrying only what's necessary for the journey: wisdom, discipline, peace. This is not about abandoning life. It's about living it fully, unchained. When you begin to remove, life doesn't become empty, it becomes lighter. The weight you drop becomes space for clarity, for purpose, for peace. Epictetus taught, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. That is the heart of this truth. The one who wants less owns more of himself. The one who eliminates noise finds clarity in silence. So, as you begin this inward journey, understand this. The 15 things you must silently remove are not external objects. They are inner attachments disguised as necessities. They are the hidden chains: resentment, pride, comparison, fear, overthinking, judgment, and the constant urge to control. Once you begin removing them, you'll notice something strange. Life starts to feel lighter, but also slower, quieter. At first, the silence feels uncomfortable. You'll crave the noise you used to know, but soon the stillness becomes sacred. That's the Stoic truth. Freedom is not something you chase. It's what remains when you stop holding on. You know what happens when you start letting go. The world resists. Your mind resists. Everything that once fed your chaos begins to whisper to you, trying to pull you back into the noise. When you stop chasing validation, people begin to question you. They say you've changed. They call you cold, detached, distant. But what they don't see is that you're simply done explaining your peace to those addicted to chaos. There's a strange pain in this part of the journey, a quiet war that happens within you. You start realizing that not everything or everyone was meant to come with you to your next chapter. You begin to see how much of your energy was spent keeping things alive that were already dead. It's not easy to remove things that have lived inside you for years. Overthinking has become your security blanket, anger your shield, pleasing others your survival mechanism. And yet, deep down, you feel that every time you give in to them, a piece of your spirit withers. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And that's the battle. Because self-mastery isn't glamorous. It's not a loud victory. It's 1,000 small acts of discipline happening quietly inside you. It's the moment you choose silence instead of reaction, restraint instead of revenge, clarity instead of chaos. You'll feel tempted to return to old habits. Your ego will whisper that you're missing out, that peace is boring, that stillness means weakness. But that's only the voice of the old self fighting for survival. because when you stop feeding your old patterns, they begin to starve, and they'll do everything they can to stay alive. You'll notice how deeply you were attached to control, how hard it is to stop checking your phone every few minutes, how much your self-worth depends on being seen, liked, or approved of. And when you finally look at that honestly, it hurts, because you realize how quietly you traded freedom for comfort. Seneca wrote, "If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable." Most people drift through life, pulled by the winds of emotion and impulse. They're angry because the world is loud, not realizing they've chosen to listen to every noise around them. They're anxious because they've filled every moment of silence with distraction. And the Stoic way calls you to do the opposite, to steer your ship with intention, to face the storm without losing your direction. The truth is, the hardest part of removing the unnecessary isn't the loss. It's the silence that follows it. You remove drama and you feel lonely. You stop explaining yourself and you feel misunderstood. You let go of overthinking and you feel empty. That emptiness isn't a void, it's space. Space for a calmer mind to grow. Space for peace to return. This is the paradox of the Stoic path. You lose what you never needed and gain what you were always seeking. But that transformation doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens in quiet resistance, day by day, choice by choice. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And that's where the battle begins and ends, not in the outer world, but in your thoughts. Because the moment you master what happens inside you, the outside loses its power over you. So when you begin removing things from your life, remember this: it's not just decluttering your habits, it's cleansing your soul. It's learning to sit in silence without fear, to walk alone without anxiety, to live simply without apology. The world may not understand it, but you will. Because the quiet that once scared you will become your greatest source of strength. There comes a quiet day, one that feels ordinary on the surface, when something inside you finally shifts. You stop running, you stop explaining, you stop fighting battles that were never yours to begin with. It doesn't happen with a dramatic moment or a burst of enlightenment. It happens softly, like a dawn that doesn't announce itself but simply arrives. You wake up and realize the peace you were searching for was never lost. It was just buried under everything you refused to let go of. For the first time in years, you start seeing clearly. You look around and notice that half the things that once consumed you no longer matter. The opinions that used to shake you now pass through you like wind. The noise that once demanded your attention now feels distant, meaningless. This is where the Stoic teaching becomes real, not just an idea, but a living experience. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." You begin to see what he meant. When your thoughts are calm, your world becomes calm. When your thoughts are disciplined, your days begin to flow with purpose. You no longer react to everything. You respond only to what aligns with your values. It's here in this stillness that you realize how many unnecessary things you've carried: anger that was never yours to hold, arguments that brought no truth, attachments that disguised themselves as love, and guilt for simply choosing peace over approval. You start removing them, one by one, quietly. You stop chasing people who never met you halfway. You stop trying to prove your worth to those who were never looking. You stop replaying old conversations in your mind. You simply stop feeding what no longer serves your spirit. And when you do, the world becomes slower, lighter, simpler. You begin to feel moments again, the warmth of sunlight, the rhythm of your breath, the silence between thoughts. You begin to understand what Seneca meant when he said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." You see how much time you've wasted feeding your mind with noise, chasing perfection, comparing, arguing, pleasing. And now, the same energy that once went into trying to control everything begins to flow inward toward understanding yourself. You learn to pause before you speak. You learn to observe before you judge. You learn that walking away is not weakness, it's wisdom. And you finally understand that peace isn't about escaping life, but mastering the way you move through it. That's the turning point, the invisible moment when reaction becomes reflection, when you no longer measure your worth by external noise, but by inner calm, when you realize that silence isn't emptiness, it's power. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And suddenly you see how true it is. The same situation that once made you anxious now barely stirs you. The same criticism that once burned now passes like a faint echo. Because when your inner world is steady, no external storm can move you. You don't announce this transformation to anyone. You don't post about it. You don't prove it. You simply live it. People will notice the change. Some will admire it. Others will be uncomfortable with it because your peace exposes their chaos. But you will not explain yourself anymore. You will simply keep walking quietly, deliberately, free. And that's when the old world falls away, not because you pushed it, but because you rose above it. You didn't conquer it, you outgrew it. That's the beauty of the Stoic way. It doesn't make you harder, it makes you lighter. It doesn't make you silent out of fear, but out of strength. This is the moment you stop surviving and start living, not for the world's noise, but for your own peace. Now that you've seen the truth, that peace begins where unnecessary things end. The question becomes, how do you live this way? How do you practice the art of quiet removal when the world constantly pulls you toward noise? It starts, as all Stoic lessons do, with awareness. You must learn to see what drains you. Not everything loud is important, and not everything quiet is wise. Look at your daily life with calm, honest eyes. Notice the people, habits, thoughts, and patterns that leave you restless. Notice what steals your energy, what disturbs your calm. That's where your practice begins, not with adding more, but with subtracting. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you seek tranquility, do less, or more accurately, do what's essential." That line alone can reshape your life. Every time you feel overwhelmed, it's not because life has given you too much. It's because you've chosen to carry what wasn't yours to begin with. You've taken on opinions, expectations, comparisons, and fears that never belonged in your mind. So practice the discipline of quiet subtraction. Each morning, ask yourself, what can I let go of today without losing anything that truly matters? Maybe it's the need to reply to every message instantly. Maybe it's the compulsion to scroll through other people's lives. Maybe it's the resentment that has lived in you long enough. You don't need to make a scene when you remove these things. You don't need to announce your transformation. You just let them go, quietly, gracefully, one breath at a time. Because the Stoic path isn't about dramatic change. It's about gentle correction. Every small act of letting go strengthens your inner freedom. Every quiet refusal to feed the noise brings you closer to peace. Begin with your mind, Whenever a thought tries to drag you into anger, pause. Whenever judgment rises, question it. Whenever comparison appears, breathe. Don't fight these impulses, observe them, let them pass like clouds. You'll find that the more you watch your mind without reacting, the calmer it becomes, and calmness gives birth to clarity. Seneca once said, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." So stop scattering your attention. Stop being everywhere but present. Choose focus. Choose one thing, one purpose, one moment, and be entirely there. When you eat, just eat. When you rest, just rest. When you work, work with your full being. This is how simplicity becomes power. Then, turn this same practice toward people. You can love people deeply without carrying their chaos. You can care without absorbing their storms. You can listen without losing your silence. If someone tries to provoke you, remember, they can offer anger, but you don't have to accept it. They can test your patience, but they can't take your peace unless you hand it over. This is not coldness, it's maturity. You don't close your heart, you just open your eyes. You'll also need to remove attachment to outcomes. Not everything will go as planned. You may fail, be misunderstood, or be judged, but none of that defines your worth. The Stoics taught that peace comes when you focus only on what's within your control. And what's within your control is always the same: your thoughts, your attitude, your choices. So, when life tests you, don't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Ask, "How can I use this? How can this moment make me stronger, calmer, wiser?" That question alone turns pain into power. This is the daily Stoic practice, the discipline of removal. Remove excess words, remove false urgency, remove expectations that poison your peace, remove the need to be seen, liked, or understood. And in the space that remains, you will find stillness. You'll notice that life feels lighter, not because everything got easier, but because you stopped dragging what wasn't yours. Every day you practice this, your presence becomes sharper, your spirit calmer. You become someone who doesn't chase peace, you embody it. And people will feel it when they're around you. That is the quiet power. The Stoics spoke of strength without aggression, discipline without noise, calm without weakness. So keep removing, keep simplifying, keep letting go. The path to peace is not through addition. It's through quiet, deliberate subtraction. There comes a time in your life when you realize peace was never something to search for in the distance. It was always waiting beneath the weight of everything you were never meant to carry. When you begin removing what's unnecessary, something strange happens. You start to see clearly again. The noise fades, the fog lifts, and in that quiet space, you meet yourself, not the version others wanted, but the one that has always been there, patient and still. You begin to walk differently. You no longer rush toward approval or scramble to fix what's outside your control. You start to understand what Marcus Aurelius meant when he said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." You see, most of your suffering was self-created, born from holding on to things long after they stopped serving you. But once you learn to let go quietly, without resentment, without a need to prove or explain, you become light. You become untouchable in the calmest way possible. You realize that removing isn't loss, it's purification. It's not emptiness, it's space. Space for clarity, space for peace, space for the life you were meant to live before distraction took over. And slowly you begin to live differently. You wake up and no longer crave noise. You stop reaching for validation. You stop explaining your peace to those addicted to chaos. You start to see that silence has its own kind of language. It speaks of mastery, of balance, of control. You understand now why Epictetus taught, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. It's the same with peace. The fewer things that own your attention, the richer your mind becomes, and this realization that peace grows through subtraction changes everything, because once you've tasted the calm that comes from letting go, you'll never again chase what disturbs it. You won't argue just to be right. You won't cling to relationships that drain your spirit. You won't feed habits that numb your clarity. You'll choose differently, not out of pride, but out of wisdom. You'll walk through life lighter, like someone who carries only what truly matters: discipline, integrity, and inner stillness. And others will feel it. They'll sense something unshakable in your energy, not arrogance, but quiet command. Because peace, when protected, becomes power. Seneca once said, "He who is brave is free." Freedom doesn't always mean doing more. Sometimes it means walking away, silently, calmly, with dignity, from everything that costs you your clarity. So, as you move forward, remember this: you don't need to shout to be powerful. You don't need to prove your worth to be at peace. You don't need to keep everything to live fully. You just need to know what to release, and to do it quietly. Because the world doesn't change when you remove what's heavy. You change, and when you change, the world adjusts. So, begin today. Start removing. Start releasing. Start returning to the calm, focused, unshakable version of yourself. Let silence be your strength. Let simplicity be your armor. Let detachment be your freedom. And remember, peace is not found in adding more. It's discovered in needing less. Peace is not something you find. It's something you protect.